All right, you guys, welcome back to another episode of the Dental Marketing Secrets Podcast, where we provide actionable tips, tactics, and strategy to help you grow your practice, to serve more patients, and ultimately leave a greater impact. My name is Mark Thackeray, and I am so excited to be here with you today. We've got a fun episode that we're going to be talking about, and I apologize, my voice is a little scratchy. I don't know what happened, but there it is. But today we're going to be talking about how the title is The Fortunes in the Follow-Up, Fixing the Number One Marketing Mistake in Your Dental Practice. And to give you some context, we're talking about how, and this is something I see all the time, right? You're spending money on Google Ads, you're doing SEO, you've got, Facebook and Instagram, maybe you're doing some direct mail, but if your team isn't following up with those leads, you might as well light that money on fire. You're missing out on so many of those leads, those opportunities, because of this problem. And that's what we're going to dive in today. It's really digging into one of the biggest, and in my opinion, the most expensive mistakes that practices make. And not having a formalized system to follow up with new patient inquiries. We'll unpack why that happens, what it's costing you, and how to fix it. Plus, I'm going to share a few examples from other industries too that do this really well, and hopefully that will help you better understand the process and see why it's so relevant, why it's so valuable to your practice. So if you're serious about growing your practice without necessarily throwing more money at ads, for example, then this episode might just be up your alley. And this is, again, something that we do a lot with our private clients is, we have some people that will come to us and say, hey, will you run some Google ad campaigns, or just, can you do Facebook and Instagram ads for us? And it's kind of these siloed marketing campaigns, these opportunities, right? But our bread and butter is when we partner with clients to do kind of all-in marketing, is what we call it, or comprehensive marketing, so that we can, any traffic and any leads that we get, we have something more to offer. Really, we can capture those leads and nurture them. We can take care of them, and until they're ready to make a buying purchase, essentially, until they're ready to pick up the phone and schedule an appointment, come in for a consult, whatever the case may be, we can take that and build a structure, build a system that does that for them, so that their team doesn't necessarily have to do that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And really the goal of this episode is to help dentists understand why having a formalized follow-up system is essential for maximizing your marketing ROI. We're going to talk a little bit about how to implement one, even just a basic one, so that you can start improving on your lead capture and your lead conversion. And the magic really is in the system. It's something that you build once and reuse again and again and again. And especially nowadays with the aid of technology, it makes it even easier. So let's talk first about why leads are slipping through the cracks. So when you look at your office, when you look at, there's actually a number of reasons why this happens. Like I mentioned before, a lot of practices are investing in marketing, they're generating leads, and some of those do convert, but the vast majority fail to convert because there's no real system to follow up. And this just happened last week. One of our clients who were just doing, like I mentioned, just a siloed Google Ads campaign. We, had an urgent care request. We've had a couple of different requests, whatever. So, and they don't have a way to follow up very effectively on it. They may reach out once, they may reach out twice, but that's the extent of their follow-up. Just determine that maybe this lead isn't really, this patient's not really serious. Maybe they found some other treatment, whatever the case may be, and they just let it go. And that's one of the biggest challenges, right? Is that the front desk is often too overwhelmed. They're handling check-ins, their phones, their billing, new leads are falling through the cracks just because they're juggling so many things at once. They're just stretched too thin, right? They don't have the bandwidth to do that. Additionally, the practice management software isn't really built to track leads. It's built to track patients, right? And that's a challenge, right? If they're a patient, then it does a good job. You can put them in the system, you can follow up with them, you can keep notes and all those things. But if they're just a lead, that's a totally different story. And now you don't have this way to keep track unless you're doing it outside of the system, which as we all know, it presents a big challenge. Asking your team to do something above and beyond what they're already doing, especially when it comes to tracking and reporting or outside of their systems, that's a lot to ask, right? But an interesting stat is that most practices convert less than 30% of the leads. So that means that 70% are slipping away to your competition, to other people, right? Not because of poor marketing, not because your marketing isn't generating those leads. I want to make that very, very clear. It's not that your marketing is failing, but your follow-up is failing. The follow-up is the one that's not converting those leads into patients. And too often, you might be maybe you're working with an agency, maybe you're trying to do marketing on your own, and that happens, and you determine that, oh, marketing's just not working. Google ads, they just don't work. You come to this conclusion that the marketing effort is the culprit, right? It's not the follow-up. But the reality is much different. It's usually in the follow-up. And so let's get into that a little bit, what that means, what a lead follow-up system should look like. So when we're talking about a follow-up system, a formalized system, what do we want that to look like? Well, we want it to have the ability to track every lead that comes in. Okay, so where did they come from? What did they inquire about? And did they book or not? Okay, even if you didn't do anything beyond that, just the mere effort or the mere habit of tracking every lead, where they come from, what did they inquire about, and did they book or not, is going to improve your ability to convert leads, because it's a feedback loop. You're hearing from patients, where are these people coming from, which informs your decisions moving forward, because you can identify patterns or neighborhoods or media, that's working better than others, and do more of that. Plus, you get intel on what are they looking for, right? And that's going to help inform your messaging and your positioning and what you actually offer them, right? And so just looking at that, and then obviously the last part of that is whether they booked or not, your conversion, and that's going to help your team understand, are we doing a good job? Are we only converting 10%? Are we converting 20%? And as they look at that, they internalize that, and over time, it starts to improve. Everything that we track and we measure and we report back on improves over time because we're more aware of it, right? And that seeps into our subconscious behavior, and our subconscious can actually resolve a lot of these things for us, which is so cool. That's a topic for another day. But just the mere fact of reporting and doing this on a regular basis, a consistent basis, is you're going to see big improvements in that. Okay. But we go beyond that, right? So we want to track every lead, but we also want to then provide follow-up touch points. And that could be in the form of a text message or an email. It could be an actual phone call. But essentially, we want multiple attempts over time. And now, why do we do that? Some people wonder, well, if they didn't get back to me the first time, that probably means that they're not interested. And admittedly, I have fallen for that thought process before. And it's flat out not true, because there are many people who, and you'll find this is true about yourself, I'm sure, if you just go back through maybe your email, your text messages, your voicemails, how many times did you have the intention of responding to that, but something came up, you received another notification, you got pulled into a meeting, you had to go to a family event, and you forgot about it. And then it drops down on the page. It's no longer in sight, out of mind, and you didn't do anything. Right? We can all attest to that, especially in our day and age where we have so many notifications coming in a million miles an hour, right? So that's a big challenge. So we want to have multiple touch points. And what's interesting too, I remember, for those who don't know, I started my kind of business entrepreneurship career right out of college. I started a photography company with one of my friends. And then a couple of years later, he decided to do something different. I kept doing it for a little while. And I remember I did a promotion, this was for all clients that, I shot their event or did portraits or whatever. And this was a promotion to get, I think it was albums, or maybe it was enlargement prints or something like that. But I had been listening to a marketing guy, Joe Polish, who was very, very influential on me. I got to meet him a few years ago. It's so cool. But he really helped me better understand the right marketing for my business. And one of the things that he said was, you keep sending out messaging until people stop responding, and so he kept drilling that into me. I mean, you send it once, so I followed that, right? So I sent out one email, announced the sale, the promotion, all the details. I got a couple of sales from it. I was stoked on that, right? And then, I was like, well, I'll do as Joe. So I believe Joe. I'm not, who knows if it'll work, but then I trust Joe. So I sent out a second one and got a few more sales. Not as many as the first one, but a couple additional sales. I was like, oh, rad. And then I sent out a third one thinking, wow, this is pushing it. I don't want to be too nosy. I don't want to annoy the crap out of them or too pesky. But I did. And the funniest thing happened. There was one of my clients who wrote back, and wanted to take me up on the promotion, right? Was going to purchase it. But one thing she said was, I don't know how it happened, but I didn't receive either of your first two emails. Because in one of I think my third and final email, I'd actually included the previous email underneath, almost like I was just responding to that so that they could read through it if they want. Because my last one was pretty short and sweet and direct, just a couple of lines. So it didn't have all the details in the main body, but you could scroll down and see what I'd sent before. But that struck me. She said, I didn't receive the other two emails, but she saw the third one and she purchased. It was just one of those light bulb moments. It wasn't thousands and thousands of dollars or anything like that, but the concept is so powerful. It's being able to follow up with them consistently, because you don't always know when they're going to be ready to move forward. It's on their timetable. It's not on yours, right? So that's an important distinction, right? So our ability to track your lead, your follow-up system should have the ability to track every lead. It should include follow-up touch points. Again, that could be text, it could be phone, messages, it could be email. And then finally, it should have a specific team member who is responsible for that system, that follow-up system, right? Or a tool, but someone who oversees that and takes ownership of that. Now, I want to share a real-world example. For those of you who've ever purchased a car at a dealership, you've experienced this. When you visit a dealership or even browse online, a lot of times you'll get, especially if you give any information, but even now they sometimes have ways of extracting your information without necessarily you submitting it. But you'll get an immediate email from them. You'll get a call within 24 hours, often much, much sooner than that, usually within 1 or 2 hours. And then you'll get a text that same day or a day later, and then follow-up messaging for that. They don't wait for you to come back. They don't wait for you to pick up the phone and call. They chase you down, right? They're very aggressive in that approach because they've seen it work, right? They know that you're looking for it. They know that you have that desire for a new car, and they want to strike while the iron's hot. So but again, just to reiterate, that's what your lead follow-up system should look like. It should have track every lead, where they came from, what they inquired about, whether they booked or not. It should provide follow-up contact with them, follow-up touch points, and then have a specific team member that's responsible to oversee that or oversee the tool that manages that. Okay. So this is one of the biggest problems, is that if they don't have, and we talked a little bit why leads are falling up, slipping through the cracks. We talked about software gap, how practice management systems are built for marketing. They're really built to confuse the staff. We all know that, right? That's like the true, those engineers, that's what they were thinking when they huddled together to form these things. But they're not built with marketing in mind. We also know and recognize that our team has limited capacity, right? Or finite capacity, I should say. They're wearing so many hats. We ask them to assume so many different roles, and leads aren't always at the top of their priority. They got people that are right in their face right now, phones, patients, insurance, They've got that one guy asking for whitening at 80% off. They're just dealing with stuff all the time. And so it's not reasonable to ask them to manage this and to stay on top of all these leads that have, someone who's called in a couple of days ago. Okay. And the last thing I will add to that is that because I didn't mention before, is that the lack of a clear process. If there's no SOP, if there's no standard operating procedure or formalized system to follow, it's just left up to chance, right? It's just the sticky note under your coffee. It's just, it's those things that are going to eventually fail over time. Another good example is, you've probably seen this too. If anyone who's used Amazon, they have these abandoned cart sequences. And it's not just Amazon. A lot of companies do this, especially in the e-commerce space. But let's say you add something to your cart, your shopping cart online, and then you get busy, you forget to buy it, you forget to finish or complete the sale. What happens? You'll get a reminder email. You might even get a discount offer. You see that on Etsy a lot, where they'll send, oh, notice this? Hey, how about 10% off, if you'll buy it today. So think about how you could do that, or how you can apply that in your dental practice. What if your office followed up when someone called but didn't book? Maybe they call a week later and just to check in. Even if they found out that the patient was, ended up going somewhere else, what a nice impression that leaves. Hey, I was just following up to make sure you got taken care of. That makes me so happy. I'm so glad that you found a home that works for you. If you ever need anything, need a second chance, need a second opinion or anything like that, we would love to have you in our office. What can you do to create that, that follow-up? Okay. Now let's talk a little bit too about some of the costs associated with not following up. So most practices are spending anywhere from, $50 on the low end to $300 plus per lead from marketing, some way up to, depending on the type of lead, right? If you're cosmetic, or if you're, full mouth rehabilitation, those can be up, up to $1,000, easy per lead. But when you're wasting most of them, that adds up really, really quickly. If you're only converting 30%, and that's a good conversion, right? That's a high conversion rate, then you're wasting a lot of that, right? But I think there's so many of those that didn't convert that could potentially convert with the right follow-up system. Patients forget, like I mentioned before, patients lose track of time, they get busy, they get distracted. And sometimes a simple follow-up is what they need to remind them, oh, yes, I do need to call the office back. I do need to schedule that appointment. Another example in the real world you'll see a lot is in real estate. Real estate agents live and die by their CRM, their marketing tracking software. They track every single inquiry and follow up with a vengeance. They're so good at this. And dentists really should have that same mindset. I know it's different because a lot of agents, they're not getting, dozens of leads every month. They're only getting sometimes one or two or three or four or five or six. But dentists should have the same mindset. If you could see or remember that the value of each new patient is worth anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 plus over their lifetime, that would probably make it easier to follow up with those people, right? And so, but again, like we talked about before, it's just the challenges, right? Those challenges we face. So here's a few steps to fixing that, right? So if you're just wanting to do this on your own, I would just recommend a few steps, the following steps really. So I'd start with just a spreadsheet, easy spreadsheet. You can use a CRM, and for those that would like to, that's a great option. A little easier, especially one that you can then build in follow-up to that. So it's something you can track the leads, something you attach notes to, something you can send messages from. You don't have to rely on those sticky notes, like I mentioned before, but you can use a spreadsheet or CRM to do that. So if you're using a spreadsheet, again, think of those things that every system should have, right? You want to track every lead, their name, what they inquired about, where did they come from, and whether they booked or not. I'd include the date on there too, so you can see every single month and just go review this with your team. I love having something visual in your office, in your break room that says how many leads we got, how many converted to patients, how many booked. And I always like to track referrals too. How many referrals? I mean, just some basics. If you're not doing anything else, start with the basics. That's an easy one, just so that you can see, well, oh man, we only got 10 leads this month. No wonder our new patient count is down. We only have 4 new patients this month, or we got 62 leads this month, but we only converted 16 of those. It's not a great conversion percentage. What can we do to improve that? Is it the way we answer the phone? Is it when they first come in? Is it have to do with what our website looks like? It helps you start to put the pieces together. So I would start with using a simple spreadsheet if you're not going to use a CRM. And then I would start with assigning a team member. You can do, assign a team member to, if nothing else, follow up within 24 hours. And I would do 2 follow-ups within 24 hours, really, is what I would do. So I'd do immediately when they're available, as soon as they are available. If they missed the call, if it came in from the website, you say you're coming back in, you come in the next day and it's, oh, there's a new lead. Get back to as soon as you possibly can. And then I would add to, let's say they did a website form, then I would just send a text, be like, hey, it's Mark from the Thackeray Dental Office. I got your message, but I wanted to text you in case this is easier for you. How can I help? Or would you like to come in today at 2:30 or 4 o'clock? Which one would work better for you? Give them a couple options, via email, via text, just so that you can put your best foot forward and get the best chance of them responding. Okay. And then I would look at putting together some type of follow-up script. That way you're ensuring that there's some standardization of the follow-up, right? there's some continuity from one team member to the next on how you follow up. Hey, Jessica, we saw that you reached out, just checking to see if you had any questions or if you'd like to book. We have a few openings today. Would 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock work better for you? Something simple. It doesn't need to be long. And the more you rehearse it, the better it comes across, right? And then last thing to fixing leads falling through the cracks is just having some type of tools to help you stay consistent. Because as much as we'd like to think that our team members can do this again and again and again, week after week, it gets really challenging. All it takes is one person to doesn't show up for work or is sick or decides to move on, and now you're sharing even more responsibilities for that to fall through the cracks. And it is very difficult to gain that momentum back. So I would seriously consider utilizing some type of automation to do this. And what we do with our clients is we set that all up in a marketing CRM so that we've got their website forms in there so that if someone inquires, so that then triggers an automated response right then and there. Hey, we got your message. Hey, Mark, we got your message. Thank you so much for reaching out. Here, if for quicker assistance, please call our office during these hours. If outside of hours, we will follow up with you within 24 hours, within the next day, or something like that. You can put whatever you want on there, but then they get that immediate message. They have access to resources. That's something I like to put in there too. If it's an automated email, you can say, oh, for our frequently asked questions, just here's a page that has a lot of resources for you. And then you have additional messaging going on after that, right? So that triggers, they inquire on the website, and then your office can reach out to them directly, but also can send out, let's send out they become a new patient, and you want to just maybe you want to push a referral campaign. You want to help them understand that, hey, we're a referral practice, meaning that we don't invest in marketing and advertising like some of the other practices do. We choose to invest that money back into the patient experience, making it even better for those that come into our office. But because of that, we ask our patients that once you've had that type of experience where you've really enjoyed what you've received, as far as care and treatment and comfortability or comfort, then you share that with at least two people, and then but you can add this messaging to help them help them see the importance of that and help make it easier for them to reach out to family and friends. Okay, so that's the cool thing about this is that you can build a system that does that every single time. Doesn't matter when the patient inquires. It could be a Friday evening and you're not back in the office until Monday, but they've already received two messages in that time. They got an immediate message. They've got a follow-up message that has maybe has some information on there to help them understand what makes your office unique and different, maybe some testimonials, maybe some resources that answers to questions that they had. And now they're feeling a lot better about your practice. You haven't done anything. No one at your practice has even picked up the phone or looked at their email. And that's the power of these tools, right? They can be constantly working in the background so that you don't have to be. Okay. So that is one of the things that we do for our clients, and it can be a game changer. Because it raises that ability to convert leads. So let's say you invest, I don't know, maybe you're investing 2,500 into advertising every month. And let's say for the sake of math, you're getting 100 leads, but you're only converting 30% of those, like the average. Let's say you're getting 30% conversion rates on those leads. But with a system like this, you're going to see that conversion rate go up. So you're not spending any more money on a month on advertising or anything like that, but your ability to capture these new patients skyrockets, right? You can sometimes double that conversion rate, and all of a sudden you're getting more production immediately, right, from that month, but also production down the road as you retain them as patients. They have a good experience. They refer family and friends. Your acquisition costs for new patients go down because you're able to acquire more patients out of that same marketing investment, and your profitability goes up. It's amazing, right? This is, to me, again, like that's why I say that this is the single biggest opportunity that most dental practices have, is their ability to follow up consistently with leads. Because most are getting leads, whether they're investing in marketing efforts or just investing time. A lot of it could be an investment in time as well, where they're reaching out to community members or they're, part of a referral network group or things like that. And this can really support that extremely well. So it lets you just do more for your marketing buck, essentially, whether that's time or money. So that is really the crux of what I wanted to talk about today. If you haven't set up a system like this, just again, I urge you to start with the basics. Just start keeping track of leads, where they came from, what they inquired about, did they convert, track that on a monthly basis, show that visually in your office so that team members can cue in on that and start to realize and recognize the importance of that. And then you can have discussions around it, see how you can improve it. That's basic. That's step number one, right? And then we can go on. Once you've started to do that, you can, assign a team member to make sure that make this a fun activity with your team. Create a follow-up system. What would be an ideal dream come true follow-up system? And then just start with the basics, pare it down so that it's manageable, and assign a team member to get started. And if you do want help with this, our team specializes in helping practices create this system. And it's an in-depth follow-up system. It boosts new patients without increasing your ad spend, like I mentioned. We love doing it because you just get more juice out of the squeeze. And that's the best way I can put it. So if you're interested in that, please reach out. Just email me, mark@markthackeray.com. I'll put a link in this, or put that email in the show notes. But we'd love to talk to you. I can walk you through what that looks like, the process involved. And there's so many different applications to it. It's not just for new patients, but it can be for, I mentioned this earlier, but it can be used for referral generation or orchestration, like is how we call it, where you're proactively reaching out to generate more referrals. It can be used for reactivation, those patients that you just haven't seen in a while. That's a very effective one that can go on intervals based on when they, obviously when they're inactive. Yeah, and it just leads as well. It's just fun. Google reviews. There's a lot of applications to this. So if you are curious, please reach out. I'd love to walk you through what that looks like. But until then, my friends, thank you for joining us. If you have enjoyed this episode, if you've gotten some value out of it, I urge you to just leave a quick review. And if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Love it. Send me a comment. I read all the comments. This is not like a major production channel or anything like that. This is more of a pet project that I enjoy doing. Love sharing what's working, but I also love to hear from you. So if there's topics that you want to hear about, please let me know. And until then, my friends, have a great week.